All right. Good evening. Sorry we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but I'm so grateful to be with you all this evening on this Columbus Day. And thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with us for Marching 101, joining the Pennsylvania Family Institute and March for Life for this event. My name is Felicia Preissner. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs at the March for Life, and we're thrilled you're joining us. Tonight, we have an amazing panel lined up to share with you inspiration and information about how you can become an effective advocate for life in your Pennsylvania General Assembly in Harrisburg. I hope you all have already taken the opportunity to schedule a meeting with your General Assembly members for when you come next week, actually a week from today, to the Pennsylvania March for Life. But if you haven't, the good news is there's still time, and you will learn how to meet with them and feel comfortable when you come to Harrisburg next week. So tonight, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the great panelists we have that'll be speaking with you. So we have Tom Shaheen at the Family Policy Institute and Council to tell us the current policy and legislative battles happening right now in the Commonwealth around Pregnancy Resource Center funding and the dangers of the Bodily Autonomy Act. We have Alexis Sneller of PFI, who will give us insight on what to expect when meeting with your legislator and what the best techniques are to use when sharing your message. We are so excited to also have State Representative Kate Klunk, who will be joining us tonight. She will share her insights as a member of the Pennsylvania General Assembly on what she has found to be the most engaging methods when meeting with her constituents, as well as about the life-saving work she is doing at the General Assembly. And last but not least, we have Jill Hartman of the Pennsylvania Pregnancy Wellness Collaborative, who will explore the critical role pregnancy resource centers play in the Commonwealth, providing life-saving resources for women and babies, and also the coalition building she is currently engaged in to support PRCs at the Capitol. We're so incredibly honored to have these pro-life leaders here with us tonight to share their knowledge and experience with you. And just so you know, if you have any questions during the program, please submit them through the Q&A function, and we'll get to them at the end of the program. So first, let me introduce you to Tom. Tom Shaheen is a Vice President for Policy at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. He heads the Public Policy Department, having served in that capacity since 1991. He is responsible for a major part of PFI's mission to help enact laws that respect the traditional foundational principles and values essential for the well-being of society, and to help defeat proposals that do harm. His three major areas are sanctity of life, marriage and family, and religious liberty. As Pennsylvania Family Institute's chief lobbyist, Tom works with state lawmakers and staff on the inside of government and with grassroots coalitions and pro-family leaders on the outside. He tracks legislation, researches, writes talking points for both policymakers and concerned citizens like yourselves, and occasionally testifies at legislative committees. Tom holds an MA in Public Policy from Regent University and a BA in Business Management from Moravian College. Tom brings with him a long-held passion for protecting the sanctity of human life, having previously served as Administrative Director of Susquehanna Valley Pregnancy Services in Lebanon and Lancaster counties. Tom and his wife have 4 adult children and 2 grandchildren. Tom, we're so excited to have you here. But right now, as we know, the Pennsylvania General Assembly is divided with a pro-life controlled Senate and a pro-abortion House. The governor has also made it clear where he stands on the issue of life. Could you share with us some insight on the policy and legislative battles happening right now in Harrisburg and where Pennsylvania currently stands on life?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Felicia, and welcome everyone who have joined this webinar. And together with you, we look forward to coming to Harrisburg together at the March for Life next Monday. First, let me say that we have heard from many pro-life lawmakers and staff, I'll add staff, who have witnessed the previous March for Life and who also will be participating and watching and witnessing our assembly again next Monday. So they do take notice, and Representative Klunk, I'm sure, will confirm that when she speaks tonight. So in the short time I have, what I would like to do is just this is a very quick rundown without getting into the weeds, so to speak. But what we're facing is a legislature that right now has as many of you know, I think, a very very divided government. We have a House that right now is in Democrat control, but only by a slight majority, and a Republican majority Senate, and a Democrat governor. So we do have a divided government, which doesn't mean it can't function. But what's happening is those in leadership are very divided, especially on the issue of sanctity of life. So what we're facing now, immediate threat, and then I'll talk about coming threats. So immediate threat to sanctity of life is Governor Shapiro's announcement back in June, after signing a portion of the budget, was to announce that he will be ending the long-time contract with Real Alternatives. What is Real Alternatives? You'll hear Jill talk more about it, but Real Alternatives is simply the name of the grantee who receives the money that's designated for alternatives to abortion. It's the only funding in the state budget that is designated for alternatives to abortion, and has been in place since the early 90s. In fact, it was first instituted under former Governor Robert P. Casey and pro-life leaders in the House, such as former Representative and former Congressman Joe Pitts from Lancaster County and Chester County. So long-time program, proven results, dozens of pregnancy centers and adoption and foster care agencies that operate under that umbrella have been operating successfully for years. And so it was we knew they were under attack, but we didn't know this governor would abruptly end the funding. So where that stands right now is that it's looking unlikely that we can get that renewed. But I know pro-life leaders, especially in the Senate, are doing what they can. And we will urge them next Monday to also do more to try and restore that funding, and at least make sure that that funding is reserved for legitimate centers that want to provide alternatives, and not any kind of family planning center or Planned Parenthood center that will certainly, I'm sure, be happy to take that money, apply for it, and take that money and do evil instead of good, if I could put it that way. So we're witnessing that. That is indicative of what we've seen even starting last fall, before this session began, where we've seen the policy committee of the Democrat caucus in the House, together with what's misnamed the Women's Health Caucus, which has its primary concern promotion of abortion, who have held multiple hearings, 4 hearings that I know of just last fall, all attacking pregnancy centers. So specifically going after pregnancy centers, labeling them fake clinics, and I think many of you have seen those terms being thrown around, with some harsh testimony against them, all of it unfounded. So we knew the rhetoric was out there. We knew the sentiment was out there to go after pregnancy centers because they're so successful and actually reaching women with choice, with the options that they deserve. And so that we've seen that. And then what we've also seen legislatively, well, let me stretch that a little bit. Not only is Real Alternatives funding being attacked, but just generally pregnancy centers, and there are many pregnancy centers in Pennsylvania and in the nation, but certainly in Pennsylvania, many who are completely privately funded and are not part of the Real Alternatives network, that are also being maligned and attacked. So this movement against pregnancy centers is really a movement against all of us. It's against all of the pro-life movement, because this is one of the most effective means we have of reaching women before they get an abortion, and also protections for them if they choose abortion, not leaving them alone. And so I think the other legislative efforts, probably the biggest threat would be what I would call a repeal and replace. It's being called the Bodily Autonomy Act, House Bill 428. And that bill, while it hasn't had movement yet beyond committee, is so dangerous it would repeal the entire Abortion Control Act. And that includes parental consent requirements for minors, the 24-hour waiting period, informed consent, and also expand the types of people who can perform abortions to midwives, nurses, physicians, assistants, and I don't know how long that list would get. So the idea is to actually expand abortion, and then it would also, in effect, erase the safety requirements that many of us fought for, that were enacted after the Gosnell House of Horrors tragedy in Philadelphia. So that's House Bill 428, and we may be fighting that yet this session. There are other similar bills that go after pregnancy centers. There's a Senate Bill 237 from Senator Schwank and Senator Capoletti from Montgomery County, who is a former policy director for Planned Parenthood, which would put all kinds of new unfounded requirements on any organization that receives funding for alternatives to abortion. So not only is the funding being cut off, but there are new restrictions and mandates and requirements that she proposes to add to anyone performing or anyone offering pregnancy center services. And so I think those are, probably the biggest threats out there. And I think the most important thing we can do together, and why even we have this march, is that legislators need to hear from you. I can tell you they hear from me, they hear from our policy team, and from other pro-life organizations. They hear from us, but they really need to hear from the folks back home. And the other side, Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry, that not only is satisfied with receiving funding and receiving essentially a blank slate to continue doing their chemical abortions and expand chemical abortions, especially with the current president and that administration, but they need to hear from folks back home, those who are offering the pregnancy center services, those who are just serving in their churches, those who are raising their families. They need to know how concerned we are and how important it is to protect human life. And that goes across the state. And so every one of these representatives and senators have district offices that pay attention to the news, they pay attention to who visits, they pay attention to who calls, they pay attention to emails, and that's where all of us come in. With that, I'll just turn it back to Felicia.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for all your work on the halls of the Capitol there in Harrisburg. I know it's a lot of work, so thank you for being there. And I just want to echo what Tom said about the Bodily Autonomy Act and just all these things we're facing. We need all of you to meet with your members, particularly a week from today. It's prime opportunity while you be at the Capitol. And I'll get into this more later, and some of us will, but we can provide you with the materials that you need. So we'll have those there day of as well, so you don't have to go into it without anything, we'll provide those materials. So next up, excited to introduce Alexis Sneller. She is also with the Pennsylvania Family Institute. She is their communications and policy officer. She knew she had to work to advocate for the sanctity of life and family when she realized what an impact we can all make, especially at the state and local level. Lexi graduated from Biola University with a BA in political science. After working as a government affairs intern at Family Research Council, Lexi discovered her passion for policy and communications, especially at the state level. She's thrilled to be part of a team that advocates for a culture of life where family and religious freedom flourish. Lexi, tell us more about what it's like advocating on behalf of the unborn in Harrisburg. What should our marchers expect when they come to the Capitol in a week from now? What's it like meeting with your member? And just what are some of the best messaging techniques that you found while you're out there sharing your passion and protecting life?
Thanks so much, Felicia. I'm so happy to be here today, and I'm happy to be able to talk about this. As Felicia mentioned in my bio, part of what I do is meet with representatives and senators. And before I got into this line of work, it was very intimidating. I thought that our representatives were much further removed, but they're so much more accessible than you would think. And I'm just so excited to share with people how they can use their voices. So the first thing I want to do is just encourage everyone. Tom was talking about how important it is that that your legislators hear from you, and that could not be more true. And not only is it important that they hear from you, but the things that you have to say can and do make such a big difference. If you walk away from this with one thing other than please meet with your legislator, it's that meeting with your legislator can be used to change their minds, to change their hearts and minds. In fact, just this past year in this session, I was in a meeting with a legislator who I was talking to him about a very important issue. And this legislator said, I'm just kind of vote based on how my constituents, like who I hear the most from is how I'm going to vote. And this legislator ended up voting the right way, ended up voting to protect really important values, but that was because of his constituents, not because of what we said or we did. And another thing that happens quite frequently is we'll go into a meeting and a senator or representative will say, oh, don't worry about it. I've gotten a ton of emails. I've gotten a ton of phone calls. My constituents care. I'm good. You don't have to worry. So they take what you say to heart. And while emailing and calling is important, an actual visit in office, the fact that you took time out of your day, that you came to our Capitol building and that you're meeting with your elected officials just speaks absolute volumes. And the personal stories, the personal connection that you're able to share really, really can make the difference between something good or bad happening and between life being protected or not. For those of you who might be wondering, my senator or representative is already pro-life, what does it matter? They need your encouragement, so you can still go and remind them about how important this issue is, because no matter who your elected officials are, they're being pulled in so many different directions with so many different issues. So for you to bring this issue to the forefront of their minds again and say, this is important, we need to protect life, we need to advocate for our pregnancy resource centers, is so important. And they're often being lobbied by all other sides and they get attacked. And so we need to thank people who are standing for life. And if you feel like you know where your elected official stands, whether it's your representative or senator, and you think, they're pro-abortion, it doesn't matter. It does matter. One analogy that's really stuck with me a lot is leaving a pebble in their shoe. And so if you can just go in and make a connection and make sure they know that they have constituents who care for life and share some of the reasons why this issue is so important to you, that's something that will stick in the back of their minds. Even if you may not see the fruits of it right away, there is real change that happens over time. And no matter who your legislator is, it's important that they know that they have constituents who care about life. Now, I also want to address people who are overthinking that at this point hear me and say, okay, everything you're saying, great. I want to make a difference. I know I need to meet with my elected official, but it can be really intimidating. And so I just want to assuage any worries that you have. It really, your legislator is a person just like you and me. They have families. They're most of them very, very nice people. And you're the one who elected them. They're up in Harrisburg because of their constituents. And so just keep that in mind, regardless of whether you elected them or not, they are there to serve you and to listen to you. So if you're worried that, I can sometimes have the tendency, especially to feel like, okay, I need to over prepare. I need to know every single thing. And that's not to stop you from being prepared. But most of the time, your legislator is probably not going to grill you on the issue or have this super long, intense conversation. Oftentimes, it's enough that they're just going to hear from you and hear, hey, I'm here because I care about life. I care about my my pregnancy resource centers, and here's why. And if they ever ask a question that you don't know the answer to, there's no harm in following up. And you can always say, hey, I don't have that in front of me, but I'll get that back to you. And you can send them an email and follow up, and then you get to connect with them a second time. So that's nothing to be worried about. It's not a test where you're going to pass or fail. And you can always just go back to, again, the main points of why you're here and what you are standing for. Now to some of the practical points and things that I have found to be really, really beneficial. But just to take a step back for those, again, who are kind of nervous about it, it's really easy to go into the Capitol. There are information desks when you enter that will help you find your legislator and find what room they're at and direct you to them. Our staff and the March for Life will also be at the Capitol that day. If you need to find your legislator, so hopefully a lot of you have already scheduled meetings, but if you haven't, that's totally fine. It's not too late. But if you want to schedule, get their contact info, or find out who your representative and senator are, go to Legis, and I'll make sure we put this in the chat, but Legis, legis.state.pa.us. And that's our Pennsylvania state legislative website. And if you don't know who your legislator is, you'll be able to find that information on there. And you can also enter in your representative or senator, and you'll find their Harrisburg office number. And so you can just pick up the phone. You'll have a staff member pick up, and you'll be able to schedule a meeting with them. Now, if you call and they're all booked and they're not able to meet, I still really, really encourage you to drop by their office. Not because I think any staffers are misleading you, but just because these members' schedules can be very crazy. They can get out of something early or late. And so if you just stop in and say, is there any chance something opened up? And even if there's not, I really suggest that you talk to the staff member or their scheduler or receptionist or whoever greets you in the office, and ask them to pass along your visit to your legislator, and just make sure they say, hey, someone from your district was here, and here's what they came to talk to you about. And just your senator or your representative knowing that you came, even if they weren't able to connect with you, you can leave behind some materials that will provide. That in and of itself is so really impactful, because they know that you were there, and they know that this is obviously something that's important enough for you to come. And those are a lot of the main points. If you're able to, if you have kids, you're totally fine to bring your kids. I think that just shows that we're a life and family movement. If you want to say that you're there, if you are there on behalf of your church or a pro-life group in your area, definitely go ahead and say that, just so that they understand the people that you're representing, and that it is a large movement. And that's one of the reasons the Pennsylvania March for Life is so wonderful, is because it's letting our elected officials know that Pennsylvania is a pro-life state. We're a pro-life Commonwealth. And so I hope that all of this was really encouraging to you and helps you to motivate you. But I think at the end of the day, don't overcomplicate things. Come in with a main reason about why you're advocating for life, and just know that your legislators are there to hear from you, and that they're so much more accessible than you think.
Lexi, that was So great. Thank you so much. And I have to echo everything she said. I lobbied on the state level before I was here working on Capitol Hill. And gosh, these a lot of these legislators are teachers, they're farmers. I mean, they run the gamut. They're attorneys, doctors, everything. They're just like you and I. Sometimes you walk into their office and you might even know more than they do on a particular issue if it's not something that they know a lot about. So there's not a test, like she said. And something I also want to say, just really follow up on, is the thank yous to the pro-life members. That's huge. That goes further than I think we realize, just getting that positive reinforcement, because gosh, as we see out there, sometimes they're getting really beat down. So those thank yous go a huge long way. And the last thing is, we can also send an email follow-up. It'll come from Patrick. You might have already seen his email today, where we can send you the link that you can look up your legislators so you can schedule those meetings a week from today. And we can also email those of you who might have meetings with members maybe earlier in the morning. We can email you those leave behinds as well. So if you want to print those off on your own instead of coming into the Capitol to be with us that day. So we can get that all to you in advance. So next up, incredibly excited to introduce you all to Representative Kate Klunk. She is a state representative she's a 9th generation Hanover area resident and was first elected to serve as a voice of the 169th Legislative District of Southern York County in 2014. Prior to her election to State House, Representative Klunk worked in the White House under President George W. Bush as a member of his National Economic Council team, where she researched and prepared national economic policy briefings for senior staff. She continued her tenure at the White House as a member of President Bush's communications team. She graduated with degrees in economics, history, and public policy studies at Dickinson College, where she then went on to earn her Juris Doctor from the Dickinson School of Law of the Pennsylvania State University. Representative Klunk is an active member of her Hanover community, where she and her husband reside with their 2 daughters. Representative Klunk is currently serving the session as a Republican chair of the House Ethics Committee and is a member of the House Judiciary Rules and Professional Licensure Committees. Representative Klunk, in 2019, you actually sponsored a wonderful bill that would protect the unborn from abortions based on prenatal Down syndrome diagnosis, which heartbreakingly was then vetoed by then Governor Wolf. You're also co-chair of the Pro-Life Caucus. You meet with hundreds of constituents every year who are advocating for and against policies that you may or may not agree with. But can you share with us more about your experience working to defend life and how important civic engagement is from the pro-life community? And also what you have found in your time as a representative, the most compelling approach that you've heard from constituents you've met with, and also what top policy priorities to advance the cause of life that you have. I know it's a long list, but we'd love to hear it all. Thank you.
Thanks, Felicia. Thank you to everyone joining us here tonight. I look forward every year to the March for Life. It is absolutely amazing. You guys are in the sea of people out in the crowd, but we get to see you from that stage, and to see thousands of people just filling the grounds of the Capitol, all there for the pro-life movement. It gives me chills to think about, and I just thank each and every one of you for the small little role that you play in this movement. So as they said, I am one of our co-chairs of the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Caucus. That is a bicameral and bipartisan group. Yes, there are Democrats that have advocated for pro-life issues. And look, being pro-life, it's not a Republican or a Democrat issue. I draw my pro-life background from my family. My grandfather actually was a state representative back in the 1970s and was there during those original fights for the pro-life movement. And he stood on the floor very rarely, but one of the times that he did was to stand up for the pro-life movement. So to carry that forward today it means so much to me. I've brought my daughters to the events before little Claire was there on stage one of the years. And it's just, the pro-life movement is so incredibly important, because if we don't stand up and fight now, what's going to be there for our children? And that's really what drives me and has driven me as a pro-life legislator. I remember the first time I went in to get my first ultrasound for my daughter, and you get to see those 3D images. And those pictures are the same exact facial expressions and little quirks that they have in the womb. They have those outside of the womb. So, for me, it's very, very personal. But on the legislative front, we have some unfortunate realities that we are facing right now. For years, we have been on the offensive. We put forward Chloe's Law a number of years ago that would require the Department of Health to provide additional information and support for parents that receive that Down syndrome diagnosis. Fast forward to my bill, the Down Syndrome Protection Bill, that was vetoed by Governor Wolf, who, he would actually escort women into Planned Parenthood. So, things have changed. And the reality is, right now, we face a pro-choice, very pro-choice governor in Josh Shapiro, who has now single-handedly shut down Real Alternatives and the many services that our pregnancy resource centers across the state and that network is really providing to the people of Pennsylvania. That's the moms, the dads, the babies, and really the families, and that safety net that's there to catch them when they really need something there to help them the most. So the House Republicans, we've been on the offensive. Back in June, we led a wonderful hearing, and you'll hear from Jill Hartman later. She was one of our panelists, trying to outline all of the positives that our pregnancy resource centers do across the state. We heard from staff and we heard from clients. We heard from those families, the benefits of those services. And that really was really important, even for pro-life legislators to hear all of the good that was going on. I even learned a number of things at those hearings. Now, the Real Alternatives program, as Tom had alluded to, is scheduled to end here in December. And we have been fighting since that decision came down and that press release came out by Governor Shapiro. We've been fighting against that since this summer. We've been asking for the reinstatement of funding because of the good work that those pregnancy resource centers provide to women and families across the state. Right now, the administration is reviewing applications that have been sent in for their new Women's Services Program. We don't exactly know what that's going to look like, who's going to be awarded those contracts. We really don't know what the future holds. But what we do know is that your advocacy on this particular issue is going to be incredibly important right now. Our representatives, whether pro-life, pro-choice, need to hear from you. We've been talking with our pregnancy resource centers from across the state and encouraging them to invite all legislators, whether pro-life or pro-choice, to visit their centers so that they can see firsthand the good work that they're doing. So when you set up those meetings with your legislators, they may be pro-life, but they may be pro-choice. Make sure that you're carrying yourself in the best positive way, and how you know that how you advocate will truly have an impact on those representatives. Lexi did an excellent job of going through all of the do's, the don'ts, and I echo everything that she said. But really, don't be nervous. We are just like you. Just be yourself. We are wives, we're husbands, we're sisters, we're brothers. We coach T-ball games for our kids on Saturdays. That's what I do. We love our children. We love our communities, and we're just like you. Okay, so please remember that we are just like you. Now, do your homework prior to coming in. Read the bio. Find that connection. Try to find that personal connection with that member. Maybe you went to the same school. Maybe you both like a certain sport, maybe like a similar sports team. Whatever it might be, try to find that personal connection with the person. Maybe when you walk into the office, you'll see, their diploma on the wall. Whatever it might be, just try to find a way to personally connect. That is incredibly, incredibly important. And see if they have pictures of their children. And if you're bringing your children, I highly encourage you to do so. Let your children talk. I love to hear from children because they might not vote, but they're still our constituents. And that's what members need to realize, is that just because an individual can't vote doesn't mean that their voice is not important. And that kind of goes back to why the voices of the voiceless in the womb are so important, and why we need to advocate for them, because they're unfortunately not on this side of the womb to be able to share their story. So that's what I ask of you, is to share stories. Share your story if you have a particularly compelling personal story. Maybe recount your ultrasound. Recount how your baby was in the womb, how you saw the little lips, the fingers, the toes, you saw the heart beating. Share a story about how maybe you volunteered at a pregnancy resource center, about the mom that you've helped, about the family that you've helped, maybe a family from your church that you've assisted. However you've seen, the pro-life movement and pro-life really, come about in your life. And however you feel like you can get that across to that member in a meaningful way, do it. Some of the best days that I've had in Harrisburg are when a local constituent comes up, because we are being pulled in so many different directions. And if you only have 5 minutes, try to make the most of it. But just know we're very, very busy. So if we have to run to something, it's nothing personal. It's just we're very busy when we're in Harrisburg, trying to cram a lot in. But if you can't get a real meaningful visit, or maybe you can't get in on Monday, make sure you make that visit to the district office. That's where you're going to have even more time to sit down and have an even more meaningful conversation with your representative. I would also ask, see if they visited a local pregnancy resource center, because many have not. And what we've heard, because of the rural alternatives funding going away, is that a lot of them have not. And so these pregnancy resource centers are inviting their local legislators to come in and see the good work that they're doing. And it is at least opening their minds and hopefully opening their hearts to see things for what they are and the good work that these programs are doing. So invite them, do the follow-up, and keep in touch with them. Encourage them. If they're pro-life legislators, encourage them. Pray for them. Send them little notes. I still keep a collection of all of the thank you notes from all of the families that I worked with during the Down Syndrome Protection Act. I have a little collection of all my little prayer cards that I keep on my desk. And those little things carry me through when I'm having a really bad day in Harrisburg. Those are the things that I remember. So I just want to bring back to you that your work does matter. Your visit matters. You being there matters, because it may only be one person, one member who maybe we can change over the course of this pro-life march on Monday, but that member will remember your visit, will remember how their heart or mind is changed, and carry that with them. That's happened to me a couple of times on issues, and I distinctly remember those conversations when it was just an aha moment. And I think I'm a better legislator for it, and really just appreciate those connections. So I just appreciate your work because it takes all of us to advance the message. And we just look forward to seeing you all on Monday. Can't wait to see that sea of people all working to save lives all across the country and in Pennsylvania. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative. That was great. And I have to echo what you said about the stories being so powerful, just changing hearts and minds. And even if you don't have your own personal story, you can always ask to share someone else's story if they're not able to or they're too nervous to. So that's okay too. But those really do make an impact. And also, as she said, make sure you invite them. If you work for a PRC, invite your member to visit the PRC. That's so critical that they see that life-saving work in action. And speaking of PRCs, our next panelist, Jill Hartman, is the Executive Director of a Women's Concern Pregnancy Resource Center. A Women's Concern provides an open door and inviting space to all women, men, and families in need of services relating to pregnancy, parenting, and sexual health, and empowers families with focused classes, dedicated support, and material assistance. Jill Center is one of the many centers who were affected by Governor Shapiro's recent decision to cut the funding for real alternatives. So Jill, could you share with us the critical role that pregnancy resource centers play across the state in neighborhoods, providing life-saving resources for women and babies and families in need? And tell us more about the coalition, the Pennsylvania Pregnancy Wellness Collaborative you're currently part of building to support the PRCs at the Capitol.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And on a Monday night at almost 8 o'clock, I appreciate everybody wanting to learn a little bit more about what a pregnancy center does. What I'd like to share is actually what a pregnancy center is not, and that's not what the governor or what Planned Parenthood has been saying about us. So what a pregnancy resource center is we walk with women along the decision when they have an unplanned pregnancy or they have concerns about their ability to actually carry their pregnancy and have the support that they need. So what a medical appointment looks like is they come into us, and many are scared, many are concerned, and many feel like they don't actually have choice because they might not have a support network, or they might not have the resources to be confident in their parenting. So our medical appointment provides them an ultrasound, and an ultrasound is truly caring about women as it relates to their medical needs. Because when somebody is pregnant and they take a pregnancy test, which you can do for $1 at a pregnancy store, but when they come into us, they actually get the ultrasound, which confirms viability, gestational age, and ensuring that the pregnancy is where it's expected to be, which is, of course, the uterus. So therefore, we are actually caring about women's health and making sure early diagnosis, like an ectopic, is identified, and making sure that women are not going through unnecessary procedures if they're truly not pregnant. So that's critical. And then many pregnancy centers, including my own, walk alongside women up to the baby. For us, it was up to a year-old, thanks to Real Alternatives funding. So that's kind of what we do: parenting education for both the pregnancy and then the parenting skills as we move forward with them. Critical also is that these parents that might not have as many blessings as some of us do, we are then their family. We are their support network, whether it be through that education or just listening to them, or product resources such as diapers and cribs and car seats or tons. So they need to be able to have knowledge and information at the right time in a caring professional environment. That's what informed consent looks like. Giving them the ability to really have options and be empowered with that knowledge. So that's what we are. We are not, as what the governor recently said, he says, we've preyed on the most vulnerable. I would say we serve the most vulnerable with deception and misinformation. Our information is medically accurate and evidence-based, and we have medical professionals with the utmost credentials providing those services. And they also say we have harmed women and men over and over again. So I would like you to talk to our clients. Our clients are raving fans. Our clients do not care about politics. They don't know about this legislation. They probably don't know about the Pennsylvania Control Act, and they certainly don't really pay attention to what's happening in Harrisburg. However, if you ask them if our Women's Concern or pregnancy centers across the state were important to them and provided them necessary resources, love and support and compassion that help them be better parents, they're going to be yelling and shouting about how important that is. And I'm really honored to be able to bring 2 of our clients to the march, and they're going to be able to share quickly, 4 minutes, I think, to tell their story. And they're going to say about how our ability to connect with them and to be able to give them that compassion and that knowledge at the right time, allow them to make a life-affirming decision that they are blessed with their son, and that they feel they're better parents because of that. And then I'd like to share with you too, the real alternatives funding. Not all centers across the state receive real alternatives funding, but we are incredibly blessed with those resources. We receive about $150,000, and that has allowed us to not just provide our clients free services, which all of our services are at no cost to our clients, but it allowed us to expand upon them and be able to really provide them that additional level of care and classes, such as, I mean, many of us do everything from the pregnancy classes, but we do pediatric CPR, we do lactation, we do newborn baby care, we do labor and delivery, and all kinds of classes. That is the real alternatives funding helped those women. And our governor has unilaterally decided that they don't count, that the only option that our state is willing to support is abortion. I just find that incredibly sad for our clients. How can he say that our clients and our families don't matter, that they don't make a difference, that, you know, and if you talk to our clients, they're the ones that are going to say that they are lacking resources. And our governor, I mean, it's appalling. He says that we lie and we shame them for seeking their options. We validate their options with knowledge and information, and then we mislead them. I would not be part of an organization, and the center directors that I know would never be part of an organization that was deceptive or in any way did not have the best interests at women. They have somehow, the other side, have been able to take language and words and misconstrue them, rebrand them, and they feel that if they keep saying them long enough and loud enough, that they will actually become truth. So I am so glad that the participants are here today, and the thousands of people will be at the PA March for Life and shouting that there is truth, that our clients do matter, that they do deserve resources, and that we can't allow that the lies and misconceptions to be able to stand as truth. And then I did want to share, so why the attacks? I appreciate, Lexi, I believe you shared that maybe it was because of the good work we're doing. I'd like to believe that that's the case, that we're being attacked. But it is quite appalling that when the leak happened with Roe versus Wade, all of a sudden pregnancy centers became the crosshairs of the pro-abortion world. And we were, you know, usually we all have a servant role that we play in all of our jobs, but ours was usually behind the scenes. And since this happened, we have had to be able to be in the front line and be a little bit vulnerable and be able to start sharing the story about the impact of pregnancy centers. One of the things we decided to do is the pregnancy centers across the state have joined and formed this collaborative. And that's so that we can have a united voice and that we can start being, like Representative Klunk shared, that pregnancy centers were not on the offensive. We were actually out there just serving women on the front end. And now we have decided to be more aggressive in terms of sharing what we do, because as our dear friends at Planned Parenthood said, as a quote, that they are not going to stop until we don't exist. So we would like to continue to serve, and we would appreciate your support to do so.
Thank you so much, Jill. It's amazing the work you do, and I highly encourage everybody on this call to donate both your time and money to these critical life-saving centers. They need all of our support. So we have just very limited time left, but received an interesting question. So let's say your representative, one of our marchers representative already has a strong pro-life position. They're thanking them. Is there a way to have their voice heard to members in districts that they don't live in, that are pro-abortion? Is there a way to have their voice heard with those members? So this might be a good question for Representative Klunk or Tom to weigh in here.
Sure. You can. They might not, I will warn you, they might not take a meeting or take a call, because priority is typically given to the constituents. That's where I have that policy, you know, on a given day, I focus on making sure my constituents can get in to see me. And then if there's extra time, I'll allow for those outside the district, but that does not mean that you can't write emails, make phone calls. And if you know people who live in that person's district, have them reach out and share their stories. That's what I tell people. If you can't get in, find somebody you know in that district to get in to talk to them. That would be my best suggestion for folks.
Yeah, I agree with that. Certainly, Representative Klunk knows, and I guess I would add to that especially if you're with a group or take a group and you're advocating for something or against something, that's done all the time. So there are folks at the Capitol every day, right, Representative Klunk, every day who represent a certain stakeholder, certain constituency, who are making the rounds, and they're certainly not all going to their own representatives or senators, but they're advocating for a position to essentially to anyone who would hear it. So I think, if you go in with the right attitude and, be respectful, knowing what Representative Klunk said, they're going to give priority to constituents. But I would think if you have a story to share or you have a position to advocate for, you certainly have, it's a public place, and you certainly have the right to advocate for that. And I think if you have the time and you have the inclination to do so, I would try it. So.
Absolutely. And I would argue that coming to the March for Life is also another way to get your face out there and let them see you. Let's be Ohio. We just had the Ohio March for Life this past Friday, and we had I think over 6,000 people. So we got to get out there and really, really advocate for life. And Ohio is a really tough state right now with their Issue 1 ballot initiative. So we had to pray for them over there. But so maybe one more quick question. We have just a couple minutes left. So someone asked in the chat about real alternatives funding, why it's unlikely to be restored. I guess I think we've kind of danced around that, but where is that money going to go? The funding that is now cut off that was originally going to go to real alternatives. And if we don't know yet, then we could stick a pin in that answer as well. But what are next steps maybe is a good way to go down that road.
Yeah. Representative Klunk, feel free to chime in, but it's one of those things where if things stand as they are with Governor Shapiro's announcement, and he seems to be changing the rules, at least within the Department of Human Services, for how the money's dispensed and who gets it. If nothing changes, then real alternatives and centers won't get the money. But our hope and goal would be to restore that, and certainly to restore the integrity of why that money was put in the budget in the first place. So it's not a perfect answer, because we don't know everything yet with completion of all the fiscal code. But it doesn't look good if things stay the same. Things would have to change, and there would have to be a change in the policy, whether it's through the Senate or somehow in negotiations with the rest of the budget.
Absolutely. That's why it's even more critical that all of you meet with your members next week to just say how critical this funding is and how critical it continues to go to pregnancy care centers. Well, if one person wants to send us out on a high note and talk about your proudest moment and the working on pro-life legislation or defending life in Pennsylvania, feel free to jump in, but just go on a high note right now.
Sure. I guess I'll just, I'll share, I'll never forget, and this is, Tom was in the room. I can't remember if Lexi was there, but I was defending the Down syndrome protection bill over in the Senate, and it was a little testy, but I knew I had all of the advocates literally to my back, and I could feel their presence behind me. I could feel their love, their prayers, the support, and I wasn't standing there alone. I had everyone there who had my back. And that's where, everyone who comes to this March for Life, that's what you are. You have our back. We are there. We are the elected ones who share your voice and can give, some, just amplify that voice for you. But to know that you are there for us, to support us in doing that for you, it is an absolute incredible experience and feeling, to know that you guys are all there supporting us, to look out and see that crowd, know that you are there. So know that your time is well spent, and pro-life legislators like me and so many others appreciate it. And we will keep praying that maybe there'll be a pro-choice legislator who maybe sees the light, or at least starts to see things differently after your efforts. So thank you.
And that the Pregnancy Center attacks, that you guys have not let us alone or abandoned us. So thank you, all of you, PA family and Representative Klunk. You guys have stood behind us. So thank you for that also.
And we will keep standing with you guys, because the work that you do is amazing. And I'm so glad you're bringing those folks to come and speak at the March for Life, because their story is awesome.
And baby Rocky's coming again.
Oh, wonderful. He'll be a crowd favorite.
Yes.
Well, that's a great way to end right now, that there's always hope, and that marching will change hearts and minds one by one. And so we hope to see all of you on Monday, October 16th. Myself, along with, I believe, Tom and Lexi and others, will be at the Capitol cafeteria immediately after marching to answer any questions you have before you go meet with your members and receive handouts and leave behinds about some of the bills we talked about today. We'll also have pizza for you. So Patrick on my staff will be sending a follow-up email. We'll give you the website where you can look up your members. We'll give you the information about where to meet us. And if you have any questions or need anything in advance, feel free to reach out to him and myself and others. So again, thank you so much. Thank you to our inspirational panel. I hope you were as inspired as I was and educated on these issues and feel ready to meet with your members next week. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and thank you again. And let's all raise our voices together and build a cultural life in Pennsylvania. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.